Welcome back, YouTube pipe smokers. Muttnchop Piper here. Today's video is entitled Muttnchops Life Lessons. Adjusting your life path in the light of adversity. Now this video is primarily for the younger generation of pipe smokers that we have. It's just a lesson that I learned through things that have happened to me in my life. Now this lesson is a continuation of another video I've done. It's Muttnchops Life Lessons. My darkest hour turns into my brightest day. So after the events of that video, after the events had happened in the Marine Corps, in Atlanta, I had gone to office hours and came out relatively unscathed, and I decided in my mind that I was going to put it behind me and just move forward. But also in my mind, the way it works in the Marine Corps, and pretty much today in any service, is once you get in trouble, that's pretty much the end. You're not usually allowed to re-enlist, and you're pretty much done. So you have to get out when it's your turn to get out, or time to get out. I had about 2 years left on my contract. So I had to take a hard look at what I was going to do. I had a wife and 2 small children, and I had to make money to put food on the table. So I decided, since I was a mechanic, I was playing with the idea of getting what's called an airframes and power plants license. Now what this license allows you to do is it allows you to work on civilian aircraft, like the big jet aircraft that Eastern and United and Delta have. So, but I had no idea how to go about getting it. Well, on the base where we were stationed, there was a small flying club. They had little Cessnas and things like that to fly, and these civilians would come in and they get in the aircraft and go. So I walked over there and I found out who the maintenance guy was, and I had devised a plan. And I talked to the maintenance guy and I said, is there any possible way that I can sort of shadow you? I don't want any pay. All I want to do is kind of shadow you and have you kind of show me, a little bit about fixed wing aircraft, because I had worked on helicopters my whole time. And he said, sure, I'll do that. It's not a problem. So, we struck up a good friendship, and he showed me quite a bit, and he even had me start working on the aircraft. And he kept saying, we want to pay. And I'm like, no. I said, you're doing me a favor by showing me this stuff. And then one day the conversation came up about me wanting to get my airframes and power plants license. And he said, it's your lucky day, because I know all about getting that. I said, really? He goes, yeah. He goes, I know where you can go here in Atlanta to take your test. I said, I don't have to go to any school or anything. He goes, no, you can do it all on your own. And he said, and then when you're done with the test, I know a man that can give you the practical application, or the practical test. I'm like, wow, okay, sure. So I went where he guided me, visited the place, and I talked to the gentleman that was there, and he told me, he goes, yep, we give the test on the 12th and the 28th of every month. You come in, you pay a fee, you take your test. About a month later, you get your results. So he sold me the books. There was 3 tests. There's the general, the airframes, and the power plants test. Now, each test, the books that you get is a multiple choice questions. So you get a question and then 4 or 5 answers. Now, it's been almost 30 years since I got it, so I'm trying to remember, but I think the general was 250 questions you could draw from. And I think it was a 50 question test. 50 question test for the general, 100 question test for the airframes and 150 for the power plants. Don't quote me on that. I can't remember. I know that they increase as you went. But there was 250 questions to draw from the general, 300 for the airframes, and 400 for the power plants, or 500 from the power plants. So, I had a wife and 2 children. It was hard for me to study. Now, I said, well, I got to make this easier. How do I go about this? So I came up with the idea of highlighting the answer and blacking out with a black marker the wrong answers, where I didn't even see them. All I read was the question and the answer. Then the next question and the answer. So I did this. So I gave myself 30 days to do this. But then after about a week or so, I said, well, I don't know how to gauge my progress. How do I see if I'm retaining any of this? So I came up with another idea to record myself asking the question and then giving the answer on cassette tapes. Now, for you youngsters, I don't know if you know what a cassette tape is, but that's what I did. I would ask the question, give about 3 or 4 second pause, and then give the answer. So it was sort of went like this. Question: what is the best metal to use when constructing aircraft? Tinned metal. I'd give the pause so that way it gave me an opportunity to answer. So if I'm driving down the street or I'm doing whatever with the cassette tapes and the question comes up, what is the best metal to use for constructing aircraft? And I could say, tinned metal. Then the answer, tinned metal. So it worked. It was, by the end of the 30 days, I was answering the questions before I was answering the question before the question was even fully asked. And it was awesome to go take the test, because when you take the test, you don't even know what the wrong answer is. You go and you start reading the question, and there it is, there it is, there it is. And you may think, okay, well, that's just, you're not learning anything. Yes, actually you are, because that information is kind of being pounded into your brain. And even when someone asked me a question that, off those tests, I could rattle off the answer, and I understood what the answer was connected to the question. So, I think, let's see, the first test, I got an 86. The airframes test, I got a 92. And the power plants test, I got a 95. So I had passed the test. It was funny. There's a gentleman that I worked with in the Marine Corps. And he was one of these guys that was popular. He was a crew chief. Everybody loved him. Everybody was, I wasn't very good friends with him because he was not, I wasn't cool like he was. But I would come in and, on my off time, we'd work on the aircraft, come in, okay, what do we do now? I'll just kind of hang out for a little while until we get something come up. Well, I'd study. Well, I would come in one day and I'd say, yep, well, I passed my general test. The next time, my airframes test. Well, this guy was one of those types that, well, you're not going to beat me. I'm not going to let a, poor excuse for a mechanic in his mind, get something that I'm not going to get. So he rushed out, got the books. He passed the test like I did. And then the friend of mine set up my practical application. Well, when I went to talk to the guy, he said, well, you're going to be taking the test with another gentleman. I said, okay. So when I went to take the test, guess who it was? Yeah, it was this other mechanic that I worked with. So he basically got an aircraft out there and he says, okay, he goes, this airspeed indicator, the cable has broken. It's your job, you and your friend here, to replace it. Okay, so first what happens in a practical application is you spend, it's a 2-day deal. The first day you spend, and he asks you questions and you answer. Most of the questions I answered fine. There were questions that he was asking the other guy that was taking the test, and I knew the answer, and he struggled. There were questions that I was struggling on that he knew the answer, but we got through it. The second day was where we had to remove this airspeed indicator cable. So we talked about it, and he wanted to be out on the engine side, and I wanted to be out on the on the cockpit side. So here was our dilemma. We have this cable that goes from the cockpit down into the engine, and it connects to the inside the engine compartment. It was underneath the dash. So how do we get the new cable in and the old cable out? He had no idea. I don't know. We just pulled it out and then we just kind of feed it through. I said, no, I think there's an easier way. So what I decided to do was I disconnected it from the cockpit, and I looked at it, and what I did was, it was wire, so I kind of untwisted the wire, and I took the new wire and I kind of stuck it in, and then I wrapped the old wires around it to where it was almost one cable. And then I told him, I said, now pull very slowly and pull very lightly. So he pulled lightly, and I fed it. So as the old cable was removed, the new cable was feeding through. And sure enough, it worked. It went right through. The old cable, he disconnected the old cable. We connected the new cable on the engine side, and I connected it on the cockpit side. And that was it. We were done, and we passed. So I was able to get my airframes and power plants license, and I was ready to go. Okay, I've got this license, and now all I got to do is, once they decide to put me out of the Marine Corps, I was prepared with a license that I could use to work on civilian aircraft. So when it got close to time for me to be let go, I was summoned to the CO's office. So I went and talked to the CO. CO had changed about a year after that incident to someone that liked me. He liked my work ethic. He liked how hard I was working. He liked the way that I moved on and I worked harder. So he told me, he goes, look, I've talked to the AMO, Aircraft Maintenance Officer, and we have agreed that he is going to do a good fitness report for you. He could do a devastating one, which would put you out of the Marine Corps. But we really like you, and we want you to stay. So if you consider re-enlisting, we'll do that for you. So sure enough, they gave me a glowing fitness report, which is a report that goes to headquarters of Marine Corps to say, hey, this guy is good, this guy's bad, these are his achievements, so forth and so on. So I said, well, I've been in for, was it 10 years at that time? Because I enlisted in 81 and it was about 92. And I didn't want to throw away all that time, so I went ahead and re-enlisted. Now, in the end, the aircraft maintenance officer made a mistake. By the guidebook, he was not allowed to give me a glowing fitness report. It had to be a career-ending, devastating fitness report. But by the time that it got recognized, I'd already had 18 years in. And they couldn't just say, oh, well, hey, they made a mistake, you're screwed, you're out. So they just had to, they wrote me a letter and said, this is what happened, but we're going to overlook it because of your record up to now has been exemplary. So what am I trying to say? My point is this. If diversity hits you in your life, don't give up. Don't get depressed. Don't say, well, that's it. I'm done. My life is over. You have to look past that. You have to say, okay, how can I take my talents? How can I take what I have learned and put that to good use? Get something get a job that will, or do something that will use those talents that I have. There's always an answer. There's always a way forward. You just have to pursue those avenues of opportunity when they present themselves. And adversity really brings that to the forefront. It really makes you, it motivates you to work hard to try to pursue those opportunities, especially when you have other people's lives that depend on you. All right, well, that's it for this video. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you learned something. Till my next video, I want to wish you and your family happy piping.